Good morning. The June 7th, 2023 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. For those who are joining with us in person, we ask that you please turn off any electronic devices. Minimum, put them on silent so we do not interrupt today's proceedings. At this time, I would like to ask our amazing clerk, Mr. Les Amato, for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions on today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. We have, first of all, we'd like to note the mayor's designee this morning. CAO Faith Leach is joining us as his designee. We have the following changes, corrections, and walk-ons to note this morning. We have a walk-on, SB 2311803. This is for the Department of Public Works. Task number 3, on-call solid waste engineering services with EA Engineering Science Technology, Inc. This item was mistakenly left off the agenda by my office, with apologies to the board. And a special thank you to DPW for being present today to answer questions regarding this item. I'll share a few additional details regarding this item. The transaction amount is $999,999.95. This is the Office of Engineering and Construction submitting requests approval of Task 3 to provide professional services in support of the expansion of the Quarantine Road landfill over the adjacent Millennium landfill, and work required to meet the COMAR 26.04.07.08 requirements for a Phase 3 report. The service within this Task 3 will include limited boundary survey, facility improvement design, Cell M1 and facility improvement design, program management support, additional roadway support redesign, and environmental support. We have an additional walk-on to note, SB 2311748. This was City Council Bill 210178, tax credits, historic properties, definition of historic property. This item was deferred by the board to this date and was not automatically placed on the agenda, as it should have been due to a systems error. So with apologies to the board again, item 11748 is being submitted this morning as a walk-on. And to remind everyone who would have seen this earlier, when it was first submitted, the City Council Bill 0178 was introduced on November 15th, 2021. It was recommended as favorable with amendments by the Ways and Means Committee. The agency position reports were also provided. This is a $0 transaction and redefines the definition of historic property related to tax credits for historic properties in Baltimore City. We have an additional walk-on, SB 2312166. This is for the Department of Transportation. Minor privilege schedule of charges, curbside commercial dining schedule. This item was submitted on time, but due to some substantive changes that had to be made late, we requested that it be withdrawn and resubmitted in the whole to be less confusing. And I want to thank you to Department of Transportation for doing that for us and for being here today to present on this item. And we have a correction on page 144, SB 231186. BSIT, Emergency Procurement Report on Emergency Consultant Agreement for Workday Financial System Remediation Services. In the background explanation, after 4/17/2023, please delete Chief of Staff and insert Director of Finance. We have the following protests and statements of opposition to note this morning. Regarding page 298, SB 2311546, Department of Transportation, minor privilege permit, curbside commercial dining schedule. A statement of opposition was received from Bikemore. And on page 298, that statement of opposition will transfer to the new transaction 12166 from Department of Transportation on the same matter. And we have, technically, we need to also withdraw the original 11546 submission for DOT regarding the minor privilege permit that has now been revised and resubmitted under a new number. We have the following items moving to the non-routine agenda this morning. On page 17, SB 2311781, Department of Finance, approval of fiscal 2024 targeted homeowners tax credit annual rate. On page 129, SB 2312062, Department of Law, grant fiscal sponsorship agreements, Baltimore Main Streets via Baltimore Civic Fund for FY 2023. On page 131, SB 2311880, Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. On page 132 through 133, SB 23-11723, Law Department, Settlement Agreement and Release. On page 134 through 135, SB 23-11836, Law Department, Settlement Agreement and Release. On page 136 through 137, SB 23-11837, Law Department, Settlement Agreement and Release. And on page 138, SB 23-11832, Law Department, Settlement Agreement and Release. On page 144, SB 23-11866, BSIT, Emergency Procurement Report on Consultant Agreement for Workday Financial System Remediation Services. On page 173, SB 23-11603, Department of Planning Memorandum of Understanding with Baltimore Urban Revitalization, LLC. On page 232 through 233, SB 23-10961, Department of Public Works, Sanitary Contract Number 882, Change Order 9-11603. Page 260, SB 23-11994, Department of Real Estate, Agreement of Sale, 1321 Filbert Street, Block 7200, Lot 60A. And on page 298, SB 23-11546, Department of Transportation, Minor Privilege Permit Curbside Commercial Dining Schedule. A statement of opposition was received from Bikemore. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott will be abstaining on page 15, SB 23-11977, Charles Village Community Benefits District, Fiscal 2024 Budget and Property Tax Public Utilities Surcharge. On page 39, SB 23-11315, Health Department, Johns Hopkins University REACH Initiative. Page 40, SB 23-10999, Health Department Ratification Agreement with Johns Hopkins University. Page 42, SB 23-11772, Agreement with Johns Hopkins University School of Medical Case Management. On page 43, SB 23-11619, Health Department Ratification, Johns Hopkins University Bartlett Specialty Practice, Ryan White State Special Health Education Risk/Reduction. On page 44, SB 23-11620, Johns Hopkins University Bartlett Specialty Practice, Ryan White State Special. On page 51, SB 23-11189, Grant Agreement with East Baltimore Development, Inc., FY23 Operating Support. On page 151, SB 23-11697, Monsey Johns Hopkins HVIP ARPA Contract with Johns Hopkins Hospital, Inc. On page 170, SB 23-12052, Travel Request. And on page 171, SB 23-12060, Travel Request. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry has the following abstentions to note. Based on the final agenda this morning, he will be abstaining on travel requests as follows: SB 23-12031, SB 23-11826, SB 23-12055, SB 23-12058, SB 23-12056, SB 23-12054, SB 23-12053, SB 23-12057, SB 23-11930, SB 23-11931, SB 23-12060, SB 23-12052, SB 23-12061, SB 23-11838, SB 23-11734, SB 23-11732, and SB 23-11729. The Comptroller notes that he will be abstaining from all travel requests while his office engages with the administration in collaborative discussions to rationalize the process for approval and oversight of travel requests in the context of implementation of the Workday Financial Management System. We have, for City Solicitor Ebony Thompson, on page 130, an abstention on SB 23-11838, Department of Law, third-party funded travel request, and Director of Public Works Jason Mitchell has no abstentions to note. And finally, we have some no votes to note for the record this morning. The Honorable President Nick Mosby will be voting no on page 146, item SB 23-11869, Monsey Grant Expenditure Grant Agreement. On page 149, SB 23-11757, Monsey Grant Expenditure Grant Agreement. On page 153, SB 23-11952, Muncie Grant Expenditure Grant Agreement. On page 154, SB 23, 11760, Muncie Grant Expenditure Grant Agreement. And on page 157, SB 23, 11697, Muncie Grant Expenditure Grant Agreement. And that concludes our changes to an opening statement for this morning, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll take a motion to approve the opening statement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has been adopted. I now would like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated June 5th, 2023, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, or no votes that have been read in by our clerk. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda has been adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 144, SB 2311866, Baltimore City Information and Technology. This request is to note an emergency consulting agreement with AVAP USA LLC for post-go-live remediation services. On behalf of BSIT, we have our amazing director. Please present to us. Hello.
Good morning, Mr. President, MCAO, and Comptroller Henry, and the remaining board members. I always kind of try to stick the landing when I get here, but sometimes it's kind of it's kind of tough. So maybe I'll move this back a little bit. So this emergency procurement is about getting additional focused resources from a managed application service provider that has Workday experience in the areas of grant, procurement, data, the process, the configuration, in order to help finance as well as the other processes prepare for an end-of-year processing, as well as to get rid of some of the backlog for ongoing issues that came up during our actual go-live. The amount is based upon just an extension of those resources through the end of the year. If we need them to them, we'll use them to then. If not, we will let them go when we finish that work. It is a very defined piece of work that we need to do, and it'll definitely help the adoption of Workday and the improvement of some of the processes supporting financial close, reporting, data integrity, as well as just the overall configuration.
Thank you, Director Carter. At this time, are there any questions or concerns for the administration? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, I have a statement but not a question for the, well, I guess I'll make the statement to you because I do want to congratulate BSIT and thank you and your team for submitting this report of an emergency procurement to the board in a prompt manner, just as the charter dictates. This is what all agencies should be doing, and I want to thank BSIT for the fact that you're doing this. We as a board have not seen any emergency reports from any other agency besides BSIT since July of 2022. And so the charter is clear on this matter. Agencies are supposed to be making full reports to the board after they make an emergency procurement. Avoiding or delaying those submissions is effectively an end run around the board's oversight, and that is inexcusable. This information needs to be shared with the public. So in the next several weeks, hopefully in the next month, I'll be proposing a resolution for the board's consideration to codify and strengthen the board's oversight of emergency requests. This is not about adding obstacles to the process. It's about transparency and following the law, and if you're doing things right the way BSIT is, you won't even notice any difference. So thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Are there any questions for the administration? Hearing and seeing none, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Director.
Thank you.
The next item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 131, SB 2311880, Law Department. This request is to approve an agreement and release brought by CSX Transportation due to a water main leak and sinkhole incident that occurred in July of 2019. On behalf of the administration, we have Deputy Solicitor Salisbury. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President, Madam CAO, Mr. Comptroller, members of the board. So we're going a little out of order here. So the settlement agreement in CSX v. Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, I'll just run through the facts and the terms of the settlement. On July 8th, a water leak was reported in the Howard Street tunnel between Pratt Street and Camden Street. Water entered the tunnel, causing a CSX train to derail. Later that same day, a sinkhole developed at the Pratt Street light rail station, causing the street and platform to collapse. The city, MTA, BGE, CSX, and others worked around the clock to stabilize the street and repair the affected infrastructure. It is unclear that the sinkhole had a causal relationship with the earlier reported water leak. However, CSX filed a lawsuit in federal court on July 6, 2022, alleging that the city and MTA were jointly and severally liable for the incident. This was based in part on an earlier joint inspection from CSX with the city that had occurred several weeks prior, after CSX had notified the city of leaks in the Howard Street tunnel, including near the Pratt and Howard Street intersection where the sinkhole occurred. Based on preliminary investigation, the cause of the sinkhole is still not clear, was not determined. There was evidence that the city was aware of a leak in the tunnel prior to that sinkhole. However, there may have been other causes that ultimately led to the sinkhole, including electrical current from the light rail that can also have a corrosive effect on the area. CSX claimed $2.5 million in damages, although CSX does understand that the case is capped at $400,000 under the Local Government Tort Claims Act, even though they clearly incurred far more damage than that. Because of the potential weaknesses in the city's arguments over the lack of notice and defect, the Law Department is recommending settlement in the amount of $245,000.
At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
I think this question might be specifically for DPW.
Yeah, and I know we have Mr. Tim Wolf is, I believe, present on the line, because I know there were some questions that were sort of more process-oriented around reporting these. So,
Ms. Hubbard, do you see Mr. Wolf?
No.
If someone...
Yes.
You do?
yes.
Mr. Wolf, are you available?
He has to unmute.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes,
you-
I'm on.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. At this
Yeah.
time, we have a question from the Comptroller. Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Morning.
Good morning.
I understand that several city agencies were aware of the water leak prior to the sinkhole. Can you explain to the board why work was not expedited to deal with this issue?
Well, Mr. Controller, first of all, I was not at the city in 2019, so I want to make that clear that I wasn't privy to that information. So, but I do know how we normally respond to requests like this, leaks in tunnels, and I can go through the process of how we address these issues. But any information back in 2019, I was not a city employee at that.
Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry, that is a fairer way to frame this, since you weren't actually here to see that decision firsthand. Based on the way that the policy worked, as you're aware at the time, why would not work have been expedited for this issue?
Well, like I said, our normal process, if we get a request for a leak, it be in the CSX tunnel or wherever else in the city, we immediately, normally, Utility Maintenance Division is contacted. They send out an investigator to try to identify the leak, assess what the leak is about, where it is. And if the leak cannot be determined from the surface or observations, and in this case, like a leak in the tunnel, we would send out our leak detection crew. And they would go out and use hydrophones to listen to the water mains. And typically we would do that at night so we can identify and locate the leak. Because if a leak goes into for example, a CSX tunnel, it doesn't mean the leak is directly above where the water is entering the tunnel. It could be a half a block away. And one of the other things we do is also we take samples of the water to first of all identify, is it potable city water? And typically the identifier is fluoride. If there's fluoride in the water, we feel more confident that it is obviously a water main leak or a leaking valve. That's that case. But it could be groundwater, high groundwater table, eventual, deterioration of grout in the tunnel. And I think it was Steve, I'm not sure, before mentioned that, straight currents do, cause corrosion. So there's a lot of issues that have to be evaluated. And in the city, a lot of the streams were buried underground and conveyed by drains. So again, I mean, we do have a protocol that we do respond to leaks and bring in different technologies to try to determine, isolate, and locate. And actually, when I was at the city, there was a leak further upstream, up the CSX tunnel, the Howard Street tunnel, and we use what we call a smart ball that we actually insert a sensor in the water main and shoot it down the pipe, flow it through, so we can identify where a leak potentially is by noise. So there's a lot of technologies we use to address leaks like this. So, I mean, I'm not sure I'm answering your question directly, but we do have, a protocol and support and technology to, address leaks at, various locations in the city or the tunnels or things of that nature.
I think you got at a big chunk of it, which is that there is a process, there's a series of things that that the city does to respond to knowing that there's a leak, and that in the case of this particular incident, there was a dramatic and visible result before the city had completed the different things that we do trying to figure out what is the next appropriate step. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay. So the question then I would ask as a follow-up is, are there any measures or policies that are in place today that would help DPW approach a situation like this differently, or is this just something we have to accept that if we don't hear about the leak until too close to the time in which the sinkhole forms, the city's just never going to be able to respond in time to prevent it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair response. It's obviously it's hard to identify, not knowing underground leaks and eyes on the ground like CSX are running through the tunnel all the time with trains. And as soon as we hear information about a potential leak, we then mobilize, our crews and our support staff, as I mentioned before. So obviously, identify, on the surface, if there's surface identification, settlement or areas of concern, we would triage and look into that area where, for example, if there's flooding in an area that we could cause potentially a storm drain has a problem, maybe it's really, and there's no definitive, identification to, say this is where the leak is and this is the source. It takes quite a bit of an analysis to really identify.
Okay. The only thing I can say to that is I think we need to talk to BSID about getting DPW a stronger, more robust.
Part of the emergency funding.
Perhaps that was what the emergency procurement was for, is, Tim, we need to get you a better connection. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that. I was actually at Back River, and I apologize. I hope can you hear me okay?
You shouldn't even have said that, Tim. That is like that doesn't make the joke better. Yeah.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right, thank
Sorry.
you.
Yes.
That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. No apology needed. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns for the administration? Madam CAO, the floor is yours.
Yes. Quick question. Was CSX aware of the leak?
So there are a couple different leaks, but yes, CSX was, there was a joint inspection done about 2 weeks before the sinkhole occurred with CSX and the city, that CSX would have, the leak was observed at that time.
Got it. Do we know if there were remediation plans that were developed in partnership with CSX following that inspection 2 weeks prior to the sinkhole?
So I think that, and this is something that that Mr. Wolf can maybe speak to better, but I think when there are leaks observed, there's sort of a protocol in place for testing the water to try and understand where the water is coming from. I think one of the things that we have worked in the course of this litigation is to understand what exactly happened, what testing was done. Now, all that said, in the course of the litigation, I also want to make clear that the city's position was still going to be that, it wasn't clear that this leak was the actual direct cause of the sinkhole. But to answer your question, the normal course would be to do testing on the water that's observed at the tunnel, and that was something I believe there was testing that had been done. That was something that we were sort of uncovering in the course of discovery around the litigation.
Thank you, Ms. CAO. Madam CAO, at this time, are there any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is on the floor. It's been properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has been approved. The next item can be on non-routine can be found on pages 132 and 133, SB 23-11723, Law Department. This request is to approve a settlement of a lawsuit filed by Sean Lewis against Baltimore Police Department, Police Officer Christopher Florio, related to the officer's use of a taser on the plaintiff in 2018, who was a minor at the time of this incident. At this time, we have Deputy Solicitor Salisbury. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. On May 15th, 2018, a plaintiff who was 15 years old at the time was involved in an incident outside of the Lockerman Bundy Elementary School in West Baltimore. Plaintiff was attempting to pick up his brother from school. The school would not release his brother, as per policy they were only supposed to release the students to a parent. The plaintiff became agitated and aggressive, banging on the school door, forcing the school to actually go into lockdown. BPD arrived on the scene and engaged the plaintiff. The plaintiff was pacing up and down the street when Officer Florio repeatedly told him to step back, but the plaintiff did not walk away. The officer eventually deployed his taser and tased the plaintiff 4 separate times. Plaintiff ultimately had to undergo surgery to have one of the taser prongs removed from his genitals, although there was no permanent damage. One of the issues that came up was whether the use of the taser was necessary at this point. I think there was some question about that, but based on a review of other settlements involving a taser and non-permanent damage, again, the cost of outside counsel and the risk of litigation of this case going before a jury, the law department is recommending a settlement in the amount of $500,000.
Thank you. Is Officer Florio still a member of Baltimore Police Department?
No, Officer Florio retired. One of the issues that came up in the case is Officer Florio had retired for medical reasons, and so there was some question about, I think, in discovery, it was unclear whether or not Officer Florio actually remembered or was going to say that he had no recollection of the event. So his testimony would obviously be very important for the city's defense. That was another one of the reasons why settlement was, the law department was recommending settlement. But Officer Florio is no longer a member of the BPD.
Does he receive or is still eligible for a pension from the city?
I believe so, but I would double check on that. But I believe he retired for medical reasons, so it was not, I don't believe there was any event that would have made him ineligible for a pension.
And him costing the city what we're estimating to be $500,000 plus all the time of our amazing law department, that doesn't come out of his pension, or he's not held responsible for that, correct?
No, Mr. Council President.
Was the defendant arrested?
Yes, the defendant was arrested.
I'm sorry, the plaintiff.
Yes, the plaintiff
was
was arrested, was handcuffed, and was detained. Yes.
What was the How was the case handled after that?
I believe, I'm not positive if it was not if there were no charges pressed or he was not convicted, but the plaintiff never served any time in connection with this incident.
Yeah,
I
that's,
could double check on that.
yeah. Could you check real quick?
I would have to get back to you on that, but
All right.
I don't believe, he was detained, he was arrested, transported to BPD, but was not, I don't believe charges were pressed.
Understood. And I know this is not the position of the law department or yourself, Director Solicitor, but the trauma of a 15-year-old being arrested in front of their younger sibling is enough. Whether, charges move forward or, whether he was ultimately adjudicated, however the process took place, just the incident in itself was probably pretty traumatic. I can only imagine, I believe you said one of the prongs was in his testicle.
That's correct.
So the level of pain and trauma that he probably was in at the time, and then put in handcuffs, and I would assume put in a police wagon and transported to the hospital in front of his brother or his sister, who obviously he was given the custodial guardianship at the time to go pick them up. So I just want to frame it out for us, it's bigger than just if someone has served jail time. It's still the trauma that not only his sibling experienced, but then also the other younger children that was at the elementary school.
That's correct.
At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of this board? Having and seeing none, and you'll be able to get the additional information back to me,
Yes.
please.
Yes.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. We will now turn, and our favorite presenter today will be Mr. Salisbury. We will now turn to pages 134 and 135, SB 2311836, Law Department. The request is to approve a settlement of a lawsuit filed by Stanley Bass against the mayor, City Council of Baltimore, the Baltimore Police Department Commissioner, Michael Harrison, and numerous Baltimore Police Department officers. Deputy Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. On May 21, 2010, around 9:30 p.m., two BPD detectives observed Mr. Bass in an area known for drug trafficking. They observed him making what they believed to be a drug transaction and arrested him. Plaintiff would later plead guilty to multiple charges relating to illegal possession of firearms and controlled substances. Plaintiff served 15 months in prison and then spent 4 years on parole. In 2019, following the indictment and conviction of GTTF officers, the state's attorney's office filed a motion to vacate Mr. Bass's conviction. The arresting officers, Mr. Bass's arresting officers, were not members of the GTTF, but one of the GTTF officers, Mamadou Gandu, had testified in a separate trial that he and several officers, including one of Bass's arresting officers, had planted drugs on multiple occasions. Again, on this basis, the state's attorney's office vacated Mr. Bass's conviction. Again, the vacating motion did not allege that in this specific instance drugs had been planted, but that in general one of the arresting officers had participated in that. The testimony indicated that one of the arresting officers had participated in that activity. Based on this, Mr. Bass filed a lawsuit in 2022 alleging malicious prosecution and several claims about improper training in the department. As with other cases, and there was a similar one at the last Board of Estimates meeting, the law department felt that one of the key issues if this case were to go to trial would be the credibility of the officers. In the interest of avoiding the possible legal exposure of going to trial, as well as the defense costs that would be associated with defending the officer, the law department is recommending a settlement in the amount of $310,000.
Thank you. Do you have the complete list of the officers?
Yes.
Could you please read it into record?
Yes. The officers were Jason Giordano, Damon Peck, and Stephen Bowman.
So Are all three currently members of the Baltimore Police Department?
Yes,
Are all three still eligible for the pension?
I believe so. I would double check on that, but I don't, they're still active members of the BPD.
Were there any internal actions taken against these officers?
Not in connection with this incident.
Was there an internal affairs investigation associated with this incident?
I don't believe so, because the motion to vacate came many years following the actual underlying arrest. So I don't believe, I'll double check on that, but I don't believe there was an IAD or PIB investigation about this specific incident.
Are there statutes of limitations when incidents like this occur that makes it, that puts us in a position that we don't do the investigation?
I don't believe there wouldn't be any statute of limitations for the BPD to conduct their own internal investigation. The statute of limitations would relate to the bringing civil charges against the officers in the department.
Is it typical departmental procedures that when incidents like this occur, particularly connected to cases like the GTTF, meaning an officer, that we don't go back and do those investigations? Particularly for members that are still on, in the department?
I think that, again, I want to, just check myself that I will double check that there was an investigation done. But again, in this specific instance, because there was no actual allegation that, in the state's attorney's office, when they filed the motion to vacate this conviction, there was never actually an allegation from the state's attorney's office that this particular incident involved any officer misconduct or planning of drugs or anything like that. It was only alleged in the civil lawsuit filed by Mr. Bass.
Yes, because it brought in the concern of credibility.
Right.
Correct.
And again, it was because in the motion to vacate, it noted that one of the GTTF officers, again, none of those three officers were actually members of the gun trace task force, but it noted that in a testimony from a separate case, one of the actual GTTF officers named one of those officers who he had worked with around that time as having engaged in misconduct. But again, in this specific, in the state's attorney's office's motion to vacate, there was no specific allegation of any misconduct related to this incident with Mr. Bass from 2010.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all appreciate the fact that the misconduct, the corruption, the criminal engagement of Baltimore Police Department officers span far past the officers that were convicted in GTTF and span far past officers that were assigned to GTTF. I think the concern is when there is a credible claim, the city's on the hook now to pay how much money to this individual?
The settlement that the law department is recommending is $310,000.
City's on the hook to pay $310,000 for their actions. At a minimum, we would go back and ensure that there's an investigation. I think that we owe it to ourselves as it relates to being the stewards and the fiduciary responsible party of the taxpayers' money, but more importantly, as it relates to the citizens that are engaging in a police department that has been riddled with issues for decades, and as we continue to try to rebuild trust between the police department and our community. So I just want to understand, when we go down this path and we are settling anything, at a minimum, the officers that we're settling with for that particular incident, there should be an internal investigation.
Absolutely. I'll be sure to discuss that and bring that message back to BPD.
At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Having and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Deputy Solicitor, if you could please look into that information and then try to figure out next steps. The board definitely entertained this idea, but it's expected that in future cases, when we are going down this path of settlement, that internal investigations are done on those particular incidents. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 136, 137, SB 2311837. Law Department, the request is to approve settlement of lawsuit filed by James Hanley against the Baltimore Police Department with allegations of discrimination and retaliation based on his race. That's it. Deputy Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Plaintiff James Hanley is a former major in the Baltimore City Police Department. He is a white male. He left the department in 2020 and filed a federal lawsuit alleging that he had been discriminated against on the basis of his race and gender. Under the previous commissioner, Kevin Davis, plaintiff had been promoted to the rank of acting inspector. Once Darrell D'Souza became commissioner, then Commissioner D'Souza made a comment to the command staff that BPD, in effect, had too many white males, and his goal was to remove the white male elements from the department. Plaintiff claims he was then involuntarily transferred several times and was denied promotion. He then brought this lawsuit against the department for discrimination, claiming disparate treatment and retaliation. The city filed a motion to dismiss all of plaintiff's claims. The U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland denied the city's motion to dismiss in August 22 with respect to the discrimination claims. The court found that Hanley had been a decorated member of BPD and received several promotions during his employment. The court further found that, quote, Hanley's allegations plausibly suggest that his race and/or sex motivated his demotion, although then Commissioner D'Souza's statements may not be direct evidence of discrimination. They suggest D'Souza was considering the racial and gender makeup of the BPD around the time he demoted Hanley. So the case then is proceeding past the motion to dismiss phase into discovery. If the city were to move forward in the litigation and the case were to come before a jury, the claims would likely turn on the credibility of former Commissioner D'Souza, who was the BPD's primary decision maker and the subject of the allegations. D'Souza had, in the intervening years, served time in prison for tax fraud and would likely have credibility issues were this case to proceed to trial. Based on the risks of further litigation, the law department is recommending settlement in the amount of $75,000, which is well below the $175,000 demand from the plaintiff.
What was the makeup of the command staff at the time?
I would have to get back to you do you mean the percentage of the racial makeup of the command staff? I would have to get back to you with a precise number.
How many other white male officers were demoted at the same time?
So in the district court's findings on the motion to dismiss, it did note that the former Commissioner D'Souza had made what the court characterized as suspicious orders targeting Caucasian men. So it was not limited to Mr. Hanley, but I don't know the exact number that would have been demoted or transferred.
Other white command staff were demoted males were demoted at the time?
Yes, and it wasn't just, I want to be clear with Mr. Hanley, it wasn't that he was involuntarily transferred and then the allegations were that he was denied promotion. And I don't know the exact action for each other member of the command staff, but yes, I know the allegations were that this was throughout the command staff, that others had been similarly treated to Mr. Hanley.
That they have been transferred?
I don't know the exact number of whether they were involuntary transfers or denied promotion, but others had been, their progress had been withheld in the department impermissibly based on race.
Right. When we talk about, and you might not be able to tell us this, but when we talk about these settlements, not specific to what Mr. Hanley is claiming, how often as a city do we fight these settlements in court? Like, do we, right now, do we have any active cases that we're in court, in litigation in court, fighting the claims of former officers or former employees or?
I know for a fact that we do.
We do.
I
So
know
we're in
that
court. fighting.
Yes, and
Okay.
just to reiterate, in this case in particular, the city did fight this case by filing the motion to dismiss, and was successful in having the majority of the claims dismissed, with the exception of this one discrimination claim that was closely linked to Commissioner D'Souza's comments about race and the command staff at that time.
How often do we go to trial?
I think most cases that go to litigation, it's rare to go to trial, just because, throughout the course of litigation, there's a couple of different, the big milestones are going to be the initial motion to dismiss, where you haven't really undertaken any of the discovery yet. You're basically just framing whether or not the plaintiff has pled claims that could move forward. The second big milestone is at the summary judgment stage, where after having conducted all the discovery, you're deciding, at this point, do the parties still want to move forward to trial? And then finally, at the trial, it's rare that cases will actually go all the way to a jury, just because usually the parties are making a risk assessment at those earlier milestones about what the likely exposure is, which is why, I don't know the exact percentage, but I can say very few of these cases would go to trial. But I do know for a fact there was a case, I know of cases where we have gone to trial and have at times secured successful verdicts. But more often than not, cases will be resolved prior to going to trial.
Are we in trial now for any cases?
Well, if by trial you mean sort of an active, ongoing jury trial.
Active jury trial, yeah.
I don't know the exact timing. I know we have some that are coming, that are sort of in the future.
All right.
I don't know if any are actually before a jury on this date.
Got it.
But I do know that those cases do go before, we'll proceed to trial at times.
Thank you.
Mr. Council President?
Yes, Madam
If I can,
Solicitor.
to try to answer some of your questions on here. While the good thing is that for a lot of the Title VII cases, which BPD Legal Affairs actually handles internally, a lot of them don't make it to trial, meaning that a lot of them get handled on a motion to dismiss or early resolve. So that's a good thing. But in discrimination cases overall, or labor and employment, I do want to highlight that $19.5 million was claimed in damages just last fiscal year, and we only paid out $40,000. So we've saved over $19.4 million for the city. So it is, I know when the law department comes up here to present the settlements that you're seeing, it looks like we're just writing checks, but these are only just a very small fraction of what the law department handles in terms of the claims that are coming in, and we are actively fighting them and actively defending them, especially if we have any viable defenses. So while we don't know exactly how many are in jury trials, the good thing is that a lot of them don't make it to jury trials because we're winning ahead of the curve. But I'll work with the deputy solicitor to get that exact number on what we're doing with jury trials, but we are winning a lot of these cases, and the board only sees a very small fraction because we are so successful.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor. Anything else, Deputy Solicitor?
No, Mr. Council President.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of this board? At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on non-routine can be found on pages 138, SB 23-11832, Law Department. The request is to approve a settlement lawsuit for Cole Sauls related to an automobile accident with a Baltimore City police officer. Deputy Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. On December 3rd, 2019, BPD Officer Brendan Brown was traveling southbound on the 700 block of Enzer Street in a marked patrol car. Officer Brown rear-ended. He was not responding to an emergency. Officer Brown rear-ended plaintiff's vehicle, pushing it through the intersection of Enzer and Monument, causing significant damage to the vehicle. This is actually a companion to the Rebecca Washington case, which you may remember was before the board several months ago, involving a pregnant woman who was in the same car, was a plaintiff in the same car. The damage in this case were significantly less. The injuries to the plaintiff Sauls included about $15,000 in medical in injuries from hitting her head against the from striking her head against the headrest of the car. She's complained about lower back pain, which her medical expert claims is permanent. Given the risks of going before a jury and the unlikelihood of prevailing on the question of liability, the law department recommends settlement in the amount of $80,000.
Thank you, Deputy Solicitor. I guess if you could just go around, go back on the actions taken against the officer internally.
The officer had received a letter of reprimand and a $1,000 restitution fine.
How does that work?
I'm not sure if it ends up just coming directly out of his paycheck or but I know that as part of the investigation, again, here, one of the key issues was I think there was no question about liability or wrongdoing on the part of the driver. And so the BPD's investigation had determined that the officer was in the wrong and issued a letter of reprimand and the $1,000 fine. I would have to get back to you on the exact mechanisms of how that money is paid, if it's deducted from his paycheck or comes from a different source.
All right, thank you. Madam
If you want
Solicitor.
the answer to that. So that is spread out traditionally through not just one paycheck, but through a series of them, and they do take it directly from their pay. But the exact one, how they structured it, but I know it's periodic.
It's like
It's not just one,
$20 a week or something.
not $20 a week, Mr. President. But we can find out the exact structure, but it is, it's not a lump sum.
Where does that money go?
I would have to double check on that. I think if it just goes into the general fund or it goes into some other line item in BPD's budget, but I can get back to you on that.
That's interesting. Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify this because I thought we had gotten this in our original briefing, that the restitution charge, the $1,000 that the officer was charged, that was specifically because he had damaged the police vehicle. That I thought and this is me confirming my recollection of the briefing was that there is a policy in place in which when either employees for the city in general or specifically for BPD, when you do sufficient damage to city-owned equipment and material, that's when the restitution fee or penalty kicks into effect. It's not, and the reason it stuck in my head was it is distinctly different from paying the city back because now we're going to be paying a settlement to somebody. It's paying the city back for the damage that the city has incurred from its own equipment.
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected there's a 1 to 80 ratio of us getting money back. I don't think that we're going down that path, but we appreciate that explanation.
Actually, it was more of a, can you confirm that for
I
me?
can make sure, I can get the language from that policy and
Okay.
get that to the board members.
If we're paying out $80,000 and only getting $1,000 back, we're doing something wrong. So, again, I think leaning towards what you're saying, Ms. Comptroller, that's my understanding as well. But if you could confirm. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, at this time, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it, this item is approved. Thank you so much, Deputy Solicitor. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on page 260, SB 2311994, Office of Real Estate. The request is to approve a contract of sale for Filbert Street Garden. On behalf of Real Estate, we have
Mr. President, we're actually going to have either Richard Luna or Marcia Collins from DPW, as it's their property that is being sold.
the amazing Marcia Collins.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning.
Madam CAO, Madam City Solicitor, Mr. Comptroller, and Director. I'm Marcia Collins. I'm with the Department of Public Works. I'm the Chief of the Office of Legislative Affairs. I'm very familiar with this transaction. Our interaction with the Filbert Street Garden Association, which is now Filbert Street Garden, Inc., dates back to 2019. We were approached by the garden, who had been occupying a portion of our property on, that contains our Curtis Bay water tank, to do a garden They did it under an adopt-a-lot process, and it was a temporary, supposed to be a temporary arrangement. So in 2019, after they had done extensive work, creating the gardens, beekeeping, composting, holding workshops, teaching residents about how to grow fresh food, and being a mecca for that particular community, they approached Department of Public Works requesting that they purchase the land that they were occupying. This was under then Director Chow. We met a number of times with them and agreed to create a parcel off of our main parcel and go through the process to surplus it and eventually to turn it over into the hands of the communities that has developed the garden. That is the process we followed. We had to go through the subdivision process. We also went through an additional process of looking for and acquiring adjacent property on the other side of the water tank property between our westerly border and West Bay Avenue to surplus a surplus property owned by the city school system and two portions of undeveloped right-of-way to make up for the loss of the property because we may need to construct a pumping station at that facility. So we are here today to, after working closely with the comptroller and the Office of Real Estate, to try to go through the final stages to be able to eventually give the deed to the group. And so we are here in strong support and would be happy to answer any questions.
What's the terms of the deal, just so we put it on the record?
The proverbial $1.
At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of this body? And are you prepared, how many acres?
It's just under 1 acre.
Just under 1 acre. At this time, any questions or concerns? At this time, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item's approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we're going to go to DOT. This can be found on 298 SB 2311546, Department of Transportation. This request is for a proposed new curbside commercial dining minor privilege permit on behalf of the Department of Transportation. We have the amazing Liam Davis to
Great to
speak
be
to us
here.
today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also joined by James Turner, who's going to be passing out informational package for each of you. So before we get started, I just want to acknowledge Mr. Comptroller, Madam CAO, Solicitor Thompson, and Director Mitchell, as well as the staff that are helping out. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here today about this important piece of a policy effort that has spanned 18 months. And Baltimore City, I do want to be clear here, Baltimore City is a leader, and we're in a great position compared to a lot of U.S. cities. So as you are aware, the city is actively looking at creating or transitioning the emergency outdoor dining program that was put in place during the height of the pandemic and transitioning that into a permanent program. We've been working with law department and partner agencies, as I said, over the past 18 months and recently adopted a new policy that is available on Baltimore City Department of Transportation's website. In discussions with City Law Department, we are required to transition the permanent program by city charter and city code under the minor privilege program. And what we're proposing, based on some discussions with the Comptroller's Office and some other stakeholders, is having a tiered minor privilege fee schedule where rates are capped at $10 per square foot. The determining factor of an applicant's rate is outlined on this map here. What we're proposing is a $10 per square foot rate for businesses located within census tracts above the city's household median income, and for businesses located in census tracts where the median household income is below the city's average, they will be eligible for a lower $5 per square foot rate. We really are looking forward to moving this along as the new policy is set to go into effect July 1st. And with the cities, states, and federal government's emergency order related to the pandemic expiring, we really are in a position where we do have to transition this into into a permanent program. Before we go further, I just want to mention, we really worked hard on this policy. It went through the Administrative Procedures Act, multiple rounds of public comment periods, over 2,000 public comments received. By and large, the public comments were in support of creating a permanent program with some additional regulations and standards to make these facilities safer and more viable going forward. So with that, I am here to take any questions.
Thank you. At this time, are there any questions or concerns for Department of Transportation? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess the first one, just to clear this up, is where can businesses go to get a curbside dining permit, and what does that process look like?
Yes, so if you go directly on Baltimore City Department of Transportation's website, we have a curbside commercial program page. People can literally Google Baltimore City curbside commercial, be the first link that comes up. Our team has built an online application portal. We're asking that applicants who intend to operate a facility moving forward get their applications in before July 1st. And understanding this is a new program, we're working with our inspectors and our partner agencies to be a little flexible and help get the applicants into compliance. So that's directly available on our website. There's also a link to the policy itself. And we've also included a site plan, a draft site plan that's required under the policy, so we have a good understanding of what is being proposed.
Mr. President, I was just reminded that there is a protest for this that
Yep.
we should probably read, so
We have that.
Okay, so I'm going to pause my questions until after that.
You don't have any additional questions for Department of Transportation?
Well, the only one I have relates to the protest, and it hasn't been read yet.
All right, that's fair. Are there any other questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, thank you. Mr. Davis, we'll call you back up. We do have a protest of opposition from Bikemore at this time. I believe I have a letter from Jed Weeks, but is someone here or on for Bikemore that would like to present their concerns? Someone online? Do you see a Jed Weeks online?
I think they had asked that the letter be read into the record.
That's going out of tradition. We've always allowed people to come and testify in person. Sometimes we get 5, 10, 15 different letters of opposition. This board's not going to set a precedent to just read in letters. We don't do that on the city council. I've never been part of a legislative body that has done that. Obviously, this is not a legislative body, but it functions as one. So at this time, we will not do that. However, the board has received the letter of opposition. I would just note to members of the public, you can always come and testify in person, but we also have this cool hybrid function where you can also sit at the pleasure of your basement, your office, your car, and also testify. So, but the idea that we will sit here and read in letters of opposition is just not a precedent that, as chair of this board, I'm willing to set. So with that, I believe you have some questions
In
for
that case,
DLT
I'll
regarding
call.
it.
Yeah.
So at this time, Mr. Davis, the floor is yours, Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning
Good
again.
to see you again. Okay, in the absence of the full protest being laid out, I'll give the TLDR. Bikemore's concerns are that the Complete Streets Ordinance that is part of city code requires the city to give a preference to pedestrian-oriented activities over vehicle or vehicular-oriented activities. And so the question I would ask concerning that is, how does the curbside dining rate schedule compare to valet parking fees in terms of what we charge businesses to have valet zones or valet drop-offs in front of their businesses?
Great question, Mr. Comptroller. And actually, in this informational packet, there's a summary sheet. We actually included a breakdown, and it's kind of color-coded. This yellow breakdown is looking at some municipal valet programs across the country, and then we also compare some curbside facility programs. So just in general, I do want to, like, I've spoken with Mr. Weeks a number of times about the policy, and he's actually supportive of this program. I think his, like, little sticking point is, as you said, making sure that it's affordable and not cost prohibitive. We certainly do feel that the rate we're proposing is fair, understanding that the businesses are going to be monetizing public right-of-way. But we've also made a commitment to looking further into the city's valet rates and doing research, seeing, you know, where there may be areas for improvement. I will say that the curbside facility program, or the curbside commercial program itself, is very much in line with Baltimore City's Complete Streets efforts, because we are taking public right-of-way that was traditionally reserved for parking and allowing it to be used for pedestrian, you know, uses. We also know in conversations with City Finance Department that over the course of the program, the emergency program, annually we're losing about $800,000 a year in parking revenue. So the city has made a financial commitment to Complete Streets in this sense. And with this program, even though we are going to be charging fees, and some facilities might not come back, so there may be some parking restored, we're anticipating right now a net loss compared to 2019 of $400,000. So we're trying our best to walk that fine line to make it affordable, but also making sure that, you know, this is public right-of-way, this is taxpayer-owned space, and we feel like we're striking the right balance now. But again, we're actively researching the valet rates and seeing if there is an opportunity for improvement there.
I'm going to make a quick response to that, knowing full well that DOT never actually sees the parking revenue directly anyway, and so when you say that, you're really speaking on behalf of the people who actually get to spend that money. And so I feel obliged to remind both the board and anybody watching that as a council person, I was told repeatedly over the years that the point of parking meters, the point of paid on-street parking, is not to collect revenue for the city. The point of paid parking is to turn over parking spots for the businesses along the commercial areas of the city to make sure that they don't have residents or even their own employees parking in those parking spots all day long and making it harder for customers to park. So the point behind paid parking in the first place is to support the local small businesses. And so I would say that I personally, as a result of that indoctrination, now don't feel tremendously motivated by the fact that either a curbside, one of these little parklets, or a valet zone is reducing parking revenue to the city if it is providing greater support for the local businesses that the parking meters were there to help in the first place. So I just wanted to make that point. But then just very specifically, my understanding is that, as you say, Bike More is not opposed to what you're doing and or how you're doing it. It's just very specifically the fact that the proposed curbside permits are more expensive than the valet zones for the equivalent space. And as such, they are perceiving that as a vehicular use being treated better, or more conveniently, more inexpensively than a more pedestrian use, which is the curbside dining. And so I'm not going to say this on their behalf because I don't think they've said this directly. That could be resolved by either reducing the overall curbside permit fee so that it stays under the equivalent valet fees. And if that means that the city leaves a little bit more parking revenue on the table, then my response would be, if this is what is good for the businesses, if the businesses would rather have the curbside dining than a parking space, then that is the city's responsibility is to support the business. And if the business would like to see that on-street spot used as curbside dining instead of a parking space, then they're making that call. And the city's responsibility should be to support the business as best we can. And if it means we don't benefit from the additional parking revenue or the additional curbside permit revenue to the same extent because we have instead decided to follow our law, if the spirit, if not the letter. As I know the law department takes issue with Mike Moore's assertion, but I just wanted to throw that out there, that we should be considering that. I don't throw that out there from the perspective of someone who doesn't want to see this program move forward.
Mr. Comptroller, if I could pause real quick. As opposed to you speaking up for Mike Moore, I think we do have Jed Weeks on. So we would like them to present their concerns.
That's even better.
And at the time, the board can ask them questions. Mr. Davis, you could stay there or you could sit down. We'll call you back up whenever. Is Mr. Weeks available?
Yes, to
Please unmute yourself, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did not get the link for this meeting this morning, unfortunately, so I just got it now. I think the comptroller has mostly summed up our feelings and concerns. I did just want to highlight that I know we got a response from the law department, and I did send that along to the board. Hopefully everyone received it. I think my main concern there was just that the law department basically said the applicability of the Complete Streets Ordinance was only around capital improvement projects or other actual capital construction projects. And I just wanted to be clear that the Complete Streets Ordinance, literally in the code, section 40-2, applies to all project phases undertaken by or under the authority of DOT, including planning, programming, design, and operation. And then it further defines basically what a complete streets transportation system is. And that system includes things like economic development, attractive public spaces, promoting walking, and ensuring equity and pursuing the elimination of economic and access disparities. So these are not things directly related to capital projects or things related to programming our streets. And so I think particularly in the pursuit of eliminating economic and access disparities, this difference in between how we are charging for the use of space for people dining in the street versus parking cars, that is definitely an economic and access disparity. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight, they noted that curbside dining is not defined anywhere as a pedestrian use or even mentioned in the Complete Streets Ordinance. And it's true that it's not mentioned in the ordinance text. The ordinance also doesn't mention separated bike lanes or traffic calming or dedicated bus lanes or many other narrow terms. It is a broad ordinance that is further refined in a codified Complete Streets manual. I just wanted to be clear that that manual, which was filed with the Department of Legislative Reference, and by which all DOT guidelines, policies, and procedures must be in compliance with. It includes sections on curb space management and quick build projects designed to prioritize pedestrians, including a specific subsection on, quote, parklets, stoplets, also known as street seats or curbside seating. And I did attach some exhibits from that manual to my email that show this curbside dining in Fells Point actually as the example used in the manual. So I just wanted the board to be aware that I think the sort of legal memo response was very, very narrow and did not really accurately reflect the intent of the Complete Streets Ordinance. So our hope today is that, either the city will consider looking at those valet rates and coming into compliance with the law. We're hopefully just deciding, as this program progresses, to lower those rates a little bit and make it more attractive for small businesses to succeed in Baltimore. So thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weeks. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board that would be directed towards Pikemore and Mr. Weeks?
Mr. Council President, we do have Deputy
I'm gonna call
Solicitor.
him
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry.
At this time, are there any questions that the board might have for Pikemore or Mr. Weeks? Hearing and seeing none, Deputy Solicitor Salisbury, if you could kind of let us know the position of the law department.
Sure, absolutely, Mr. Council President. And I think with all due respect to Mr. Weeks, and I don't want to get into a protracted back and forth about this, I think the law department would just reiterate its position that the curbside dining program is legal. It does meet with all the relevant portions of the code. Mr. Weeks did sort of walk through some of the things that we had noted in our response to the comptroller about Bikemore's opposition. But namely that curbside dining is not actually defined anywhere as a pedestrian use, nor is it mentioned in the Complete Streets Ordinance. I had a long discussion with the comptroller about this. I can understand the position that, curbside dining does feel like something that should be supported or should be implicated by the Complete Streets Ordinance. But again, there's nothing in the ordinance itself that would dictate the way the payment structure that DOT is using. Most importantly, at the end of the day, DOT is going to have some discretion in how it sets up its fee structure with respect to Complete Streets, with respect to the curbside dining program, and any other number of their programs. We wanted to be very clear that the law department is adamant that it did not see Bikemore's opposition as an impediment to the board's approval of the curbside dining program.
Thank you to you for your contribution. At this time, the board, in traditional fashion, allows the opposing party to provide any rebuttal. So, Mr. Weeks, if you're still on, I'm not sure if there's any additional points of clarity you would like to provide to the board.
No, I think our response was, reflected in our larger email to the board, so I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your civic engagement and participating in today's process. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns for Department of Transportation or Law Department? Ms. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's just a very quick statement, which I'm planning on voting for this today because I do appreciate the work that DOT has done putting this program together. I do appreciate the fact that they have started a process that I believe many city agencies are going to have to go through in the near future, which is to look at all aspects of their program through an equity frame. My hope would be that as we continue both in DOT and in other agencies to look at our various fee structures similarly with that equity frame, there will be opportunity for the law department and Bikemore to continue their conversation about how we best move all of these programs forward. And when we get to the point where we are reviewing the valet fees and the equity frame that they need to be seen through, we will have another opportunity to look at the relationship between the valet fee structure and the curbside dining fee structure. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to explain my vote in advance.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns for DOT, Law Department? Without hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has been approved. The next item is a walk-on item filed SB. Madam Clerk, please keep me on point. But SB 23-11748, City Council Bill 21-0178 to expand the definition of historic properties for the city's historic preservation tax credit. At this time for the administration, we have the Planning Department and the amazing
Thank you so much.
Jeff.
Eric Holcomb, Executive Director of CHAP, the Preservation Commission. And let me see if I could just walk you through here. Things have gotten sort of layered with this with this tax credit bill. This tax credit bill was initially introduced in, I think, November of 2021. And the idea and intention of it was to expand the definition so we could expand the use and eligibility of the CHAP Historic Preservation Property Tax Credit to other neighborhoods. It is a proven economic neighborhood revitalization tool, and we wanted to try to get it in as many neighborhoods as possible. When that occurred, we also discovered the law department had a finding that the initial, as the initial bill was written, it did not conform to the state enabling legislation. So the amendment that was suggested at the committee hearing close to, I think it was March of 2022, was to include historic properties that are located in the Baltimore National Certified Heritage Area. And that would expand the eligibility for several thousand properties, and a couple of neighborhoods such as Penn North would be one of the neighborhoods I'm very interested in helping as much as possible, and also some of the neighborhoods in the southwest area by Pigtown, Carroll Park area. So that was the intention of this bill. Now, I just want to also layer on, after this bill was introduced, we also extended the time period of the current tax credit, which will now sunset on August of 2024, I believe it is. And currently that will allow CHAP and Mayor's Office and City Council and Finance Department to come together and revise the tax credit, make it a stronger neighborhood revitalization tool, and also address some of the concerns that the finance department has. That is, I think, the most important piece, is to make sure that by August of 2024, we have a great bill in front of City Council and the mayor. I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions that I'd answer, or y'all's.
A couple of quick questions just to ensure everyone's on the same page. As hyper-segregated as Baltimore City is, one of the issues around this tax credit program in the past was the level of equity when you look at white neighborhoods in comparison to majority white neighborhoods in comparison to majority black neighborhoods. I think that past administrations weren't unable to identify, I guess, the appropriate dollars, even though folks were asking for an expansion of this historic tax credit into their communities. I know we've had, for folks who do not understand or know, Mr. Executive Director Holcomb is a student and historian of Baltimore neighborhoods. Really enjoyed our conversations about Walbrook Junction and things like that of the past. But could you just kind of go over that of where historically these historic tax credits were, neighborhoods and communities that ultimately attempted in the past, and this is a step in the right direction of expanding that into other communities that weren't necessarily represented before?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for that. And you know, one of the reasons that we want to expand the credit is we wanted to get it into more of the minority neighborhoods. We want to get it into the neighborhoods that could really use development. That would, and this the intention of this initial bill was to do that. Now, the other sort of goal that we have, I would say we, the finance department and CHAP, would be to incentivize development in our more marginalized neighborhoods, and then we want to make sure we don't incentivize development in neighborhoods that would already have that development. I kind of see this as sort of the but-for argument. If it wasn't for the tax credit in many of our neighborhoods, projects would not be done. But if we go into some of our healthy real estate market areas, those projects would be done with or without the tax credit. So we want to make sure that we look at it that way. And I think that, you know, working with the finance department and mayor and city council, we can come up with a great tool that can sort of limit the use of the tax credit in the healthy markets, and then really use this where it's really, really needed.
Yeah, in full disclosure, and prior to being an elected official in 2004, I had the ability of buying a vacant home that was vacant for close to 20 years. The property next to me was vacant, the 5 across were vacant, the one on the corner was firebombed out. There was trash and debris in my alley. There was a huge open-air drug market in front of a housing project called Murder Mall in West Baltimore, and I was able to use the CHAP credit at that time. So I understand and know the importance of it. The houses that were across the street from me and next door to me and on the corner have all been fixed up because of CHAP credit, CHAP historic tax credit. I understand and know the value of it personally, and I thank you for your leadership. I know this has been something that's been really important to you for quite some time, so we can drive a more equitable look at this particular program.
Yes, and I would just like to say, the CHAP credit and CHAP, we know that we have to work with all our partners, that, fixing broken neighborhoods is everybody's efforts to get it done. And thank you so much for all your good work.
No, thank you so much. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns? Madam CAO?
Yep, and this question is for you or maybe finance. Do we know, is there a projection of the number of homeowners that might be able to benefit from the expansion of this definition, of the CHAP definition?
I don't have that with me right now. I was called here this morning, and I apologize for that. But if my recollection is, it could increase the eligibility to several thousand properties. And of course, the neighborhood I've got my eye on would be Penn North. It could really help with Penn North. But I don't know how many buildings, property owners would use that credit. And, in 2024, we're going to be doing another redo also.
Druid Heights is included in that?
I would have to double check.
All right, and then last thing, just for the record, this is owner occupied.
No, this is property owners. So, and we use, for example, Black Women Build, Shelley Halstead uses this religiously. In fact, she can't do her projects without the tax credit.
And for the record, this is residential.
Residential and income-producing properties.
At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. The next walk-on item that I have is SB 2311803, approval of project 1272E for solid waste engineering services. On behalf of DPW, we have.
Morning. My name is James Woods, engineer with Bureau of Solid Waste.
Oh, we get to see you on TV all the time. Now we see you in person.
Yep, flying in from LA, I guess. Thank you, honorable members of the board. I appreciate being walked onto this agenda. The project that this contract task supports is the design of the expansion of the quarantine landfill. Briefly, the landfill is scheduled to run out of capacity roughly in 2028. So we've been working on this design since 2018. Task 3 is a continuation of Task 1 and 2, which brought the design forward to 90% in some areas of the project, 30% in some areas of the project, so there are different elements of the project. And Task 3 is in the amount of $1 million, and by the end of Task 3's completion, we'll have the design will be complete, and the permit would be obtained from Maryland Department of the Environment, which would allow construction to proceed, hopefully on time, so that we can continue waste disposal by the time we need it when the current capacity expires. That's the background. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Woods. At this time, are there, what's the total cost?
$1 million for the task.
And the reason for the emergency to make it a walk-on is what?
I believe it was presented for a routine addition to the agenda, but there was a paperwork error that for some reason it didn't get on the agenda.
Just why don't you put that on record, all right? At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Madam Clerk, I believe we still have Department of Finance targeted homeowners tax credit. We also have the sponsorship agreement for Main Streets.
That's correct. Those are the
and-
final two.
Oh,
What about, I'm sorry, did we move that to routine?
Yeah, we moved the tax, I thought we moved the tax credit to routine,
oh,
or the, not tax credit.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, the tax,
one.
yeah, the targeted homeowners.
Yes, that's on routine now.
Madam Clerk, did we put that on routine?
I don't believe we technically did, but I think we were supposed to. It
All right, well,
was
let's just read it and
moved to
make sure we're
routine.
good. I'm gonna read it and make sure we're good. So we have those two, and then what about this Department of Planning memorandum of understanding with Baltimore Urban Revitalization?
yeah.
That has not been heard yet.
I have that and the sanitary contract.
Sanitary 828, 882.
Extra work order number 9.
Yep. So we're good? All right, so we're gonna read those four in right now. So the first one, SB 2311781, Department of Finance approval of fiscal 2024 targeted homeowners tax credit and annual rate. On behalf of the administration, we have our deputy CFO.
Hi, good morning. Bob Senemy representing Department of Finance today. So this item is to set the rate for the targeted homeowners tax credit. Just as background, the targeted homeowners tax credit, a lot of people remember it as the 20 cents by 2020 program where we were phasing in over about a decade direct tax relief for residential owner-occupied properties. The reason the law says that we must have the board adopt the rate each year is that we phased it in, and we wanted some flexibility with how we did that. We met the target, the 20-cent effective target 4 years ago, so the rate has remained unchanged for the last 4 years. So we're asking the board again this year to approve the rate. It would again basically reduce the residential owner-occupied properties tax rate by the equivalent of 20 cents. And we estimate that for the average homeowner, that's saving them about $375 each year. Happy to take any questions about.
And just for the record, and the hit to the city is how much?
$27.4 million, which is accounted for in the fiscal '24 budget.
Thank you so much. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item's approved. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Director Senemy. Next up, we're gonna go to SB 2312062, Department of Law Grant Fiscal Sponsorship Agreement, Baltimore Main Streets via the Baltimore Civic Fund for fiscal year '23. On behalf of the administration, we have the amazing Chief Lundy, who always is the best-dressed person at the BOE. If you do not know, check him out. The floor is yours.
And that's coming from him.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. I appreciate that. Good morning, honorable members of the board. We're here to talk about the Main Streets funding for FY23 and the delay, unfortunately, that we've had. So the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women's Business Development merged into the MBU Office, Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office, in the FY23 budget, but it did take months of discussion and work for us to merge the operations of the two offices. During this process, there was additionally some uncertainty as to whether the Main Street program would remain under MBU's budget service and supervision. I am thrilled that Main Streets will remain with MBU and be a part of our new agency. We are going to be, we've merged and we're going to, and have fully combined our operations, and we're going to be announcing the new mayoral agency next month. Unfortunately, though, during this transition, there were some funds, and specifically included in those funds were funds for Baltimore Main Streets that were not transferred into the MBU budget at the time of our merger of the two offices and put within that MBU account in the law department. We were able to get that corrected this spring, and that really was due in part, like I said, to the merger of the two budgets for FY23. Additionally, we encountered some challenges over that time with the changes of BBMR budget analysts, with the minority MWBD having their prior budget analysts within the mayor's office being transitioned to within law, and then we also experienced a transition with our BBMR analysts even within law for FY '23. And additionally, we had some workday challenges that did take some significant time to resolve with the budget accounting. I do want to thank Budget Director Larson for all of her assistance and clarity through the budget cycle for FY '24, so we're not running into those same challenges in any form or fashion. One of the other things that happened for the first time this year is the Main Streets funding, fortunately enough, has been increased to $35,000, and this is the first time that we're exceeding the BOE threshold and bringing this before this honorable body. So that also has been a new part of the process this year. We did get the funds transferred, and shortly thereafter that fund transfer, we did have a change in leadership in the Main Streets program. We had the departure of the prior director, but we do have a fantastic interim director of Main Streets in Charlene Nader, and she's phenomenal to work with. It's my pleasure to work with her. I hear nothing but words of support and praise for her from our current Main Street managers in the neighborhoods, and she really is working to improve our communication and further the collaboration with the program. And if I could, Mr. President, if I could turn it over to Charlene to walk us through where we're going as we move forward.
Sure. Madam Main Street, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning, honorable members. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Chief Lundy, for such great words. So as Chief Lundy mentioned, once I came in as interim director, we immediately went on to surveying all of our Main Street managers to get an idea of where we are, what are some things that we need to continue to work on to be able to help them in some of the areas that there's some things that probably still need to happen. Outside of that, we also have undertaken a complete review of the program, and we're working really closely with National Main Streets to make sure that we are following best practices in accordance with their ruling, and also just making sure that each Main Street continues to be accredited for fiscal year '24 moving forward. There has been a change in the fiscal year '24. We are working on some of the things that we want to see happen, and some of that is just providing the neighborhoods with financial support and doing it in a timely fashion as opposed to doing it quarterly. They'll be receiving one lump sum payment of the $35,000 for each Main Street, which is 8 in total. We are also just streamlining the process, and we're moving away from Baltimore Civic Fund, which originally will be dispersing the funds, and we're going to keep it in-house with Workday, and that will save us some time. Outside of that, we also are revising the annual agreement, and after the budget hearing request that we received of wanting the Main Street funds to be one lump sum payment, we are working on getting that for July 1st. We will be honoring that, so we're working diligently to get the agreement done quickly so that we can get our Main Streets paid. The biggest thing is myself and Chief Lundy and our team in general, we really appreciate the work that Main Street is doing. We are doing the hard work to get them what they need, and we will continue to do that. The goal is to have Main Streets be the best that it's ever been for Baltimore, and to continue to bring on more accredited Main Street organizations. And with that being said, we are also expanding our team, bringing in some new team players that can be a part of it, because it's 8 Main Streets, and we want to make sure that we support all of them individually, and that small businesses are getting the attention that they deserve. Thank you for the opportunity.
Director Nader, thank you for your passion and commitment to Baltimore, particularly our small businesses and our Main Street. At this time, are there any questions for Chief Lundy or Director Nader? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item, SB 2311603, Department of Planning Memorandum of Understanding with Baltimore Urban Revitalization LLC. On behalf of the administration, do we have someone here?
Might be online.
Yeah.
Who? Oh, we have someone online? I'm sorry, could you announce your name?
Sure. Good morning. This is Assistant Director Nicole Stewart.
Hello, Madam
joining for
Assistant
DOP.
Director. The floor is yours.
Certainly. Good morning, Mr. President and other members of the board. This MOU would allow DOP to be able to receive a performance bond issued by a development in relation to our critical area plan management. And I also have Amy Gilder Busati, on the line who can speak directly to your questions.
Thank you so much. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I'm sorry, could you just go into a little bit more detail of what the MOU does? I heard it said something like it allows you to, a performance bond, but I couldn't hear it clearly.
Nicole, would you like me to take that question?
Yes, please.
Okay. This is Amy Gilder-Basati. I am the Sustainability Manager with the Baltimore Office of Sustainability, which is part of the Department of Planning. So typically with development projects that have environmental requirements for planting trees, if it's a kind of smaller scale project without a lot of phasing, they include the planting trees and doing the landscaping once the construction is complete, and it's handled that way. This is the large Baltimore Peninsula project, which is many acres, many phases, and it's creating a new street grid from scratch, not conforming to an existing street grid. And so to start the construction, they need a grading permit to do mass grading of a large area, and then they'll be constructing individual pieces of the project over time. And so then what this bond does is determines the requirements for that entire area, and then would give them a longer period of time to implement things in an order that makes sense, without necessarily needing to have one area of construction impacting when another project can be completed. And so this lets us work with them over time to confirm that the requirements are met for each phase as it's implemented. And we have this security of knowing that if for some reason something would happen and a certain part wouldn't be completed, that the city would be able to then use the funds from the bond to meet the requirements.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any additional questions or concerns for planning? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Thank you so much.
So moved.
Ms. Bishardi.
Second.
As motion has been probably second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have this item approved. Thank you so much again, Ms. Bishardi. The next and final item is SB 2310961, Department of Public Works, sanitary contract number 882, change order 911603. On behalf of DPW, we have
Richard Luna, Deputy Director, but we have Tim Wolf on the line as well, who will present this item for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Hubbard, do you see Mr. Wolf? Mr. Wolf, if you could please state your name and begin your presentation. Mr. Wolf, if
Yes.
It's all yours. Please state your name and
Yes.
start your presentation.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. President and the board. My name is Tim Wolf, the Chief of the Office of Engineering and Construction. Wanted to basically give an overview of this change order 9. This is related to the activated sludge plant 4 at Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant. This project was actually, the notice to proceed was in October of 2014 with a completion date set for May of 2017, which was a very aggressive schedule, 2 years and 7 months. It was related to regulatory goals. It was an aggressive project, $284 million job. It had basically 80,000 cubic yards of concrete, 5 acres of reactors, and 12 clarifiers. So very complex project. And the contractor, was up against a tight schedule to get this done. He ran into some challenges with the piles. It sits on 7,000 piles. And the method of the pile installation was pretty complicated, called auger cast piles. So he had some very challenging efforts related to the foundation work, and some of the painting systems for the clarifiers delayed some of the projects. However, just to get to this particular change order, this change order is, I think it's about $800,000, and the contract is still at $284 million for a total contract. So, it is a measurable number, but it's small compared to the overall effort. It basically is related to it was related to bracing for the inside a blower building for supplemental air to another part of the plant. So that piping was installed, and when it was started up, noticed that the structural framing was not sufficient to support the loads when the actual piping was isolated from the other portion of the plant. So that recalls basically an additional design effort and installation of some additional framing. And this was done under time and material force account, and it was completed. The project actually was conditional accepted was in June of 22. So that kind of gives an overview of the project. And like I said, it's been in operation since June of 22, and it's been key to really the performance of the plant. It's been operated very well to ensure compliance with the plan over the past year. So that's a quick overview. If you need any other information, let me know, but that's the request and the ask and information. Thank you.
Chief Wolf, what is the overspend and percentage of overspend of this particular project?
It's actually this change order, it's 800,000 on 284 million, which is less than 1%. It's very, very low. I mean, this is really the first any measurable change order on the project. So
that's great.
It's negligible.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. It was a tough project, very complex project, and challenging with the contractor as well, but it's done and operating, so we're pleased.
It's important that we put facts like that on the record.
Okay.
At this
Very
time,
good.
yeah. At this time, I mean, it's indicative of the hard work leadership that we have at DPW. You know, these projects are really challenging and extremely complex. You know, we always hear the bad news. We got to talk about the good news. So that's why I want you to put that on record. With that, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tim, you just said that was this the first extra work order or just the first one of any large size? Because I have it on my sheet as extra work order number 9.
Yeah, of any large size. Yeah, and I could get you the more information on it, but I know this is the only one of any large size.
Okay.
But, yeah.
All right. And then the other question was, I'm glad that we haven't, gone that far over the original estimate in terms of cost. This project has taken about 9 years. Was that the original length of time expected, or did the difficulties they ran into add time?
No, actually, you're correct. The project started in October 2014. It was scheduled for 2 years and 7 months, which was a very aggressive construction schedule. And part of it was really tied to, MDE requirements and regulatory requirements. We're trying to kind of meet in the middle. And this date of 2 years and 7 months was very aggressive. And like I said, to pour 80,000 yards of concrete and 7,000 piles, they brought in 2 concrete plants to help expedite, but the contractor ran into some major problems with the piles initially. These auger casts are basically pretty complex. They auger in and inject concrete, and it's mixed soil strata. So they had very challenging time performing that type of work, which they haven't had extensive experience in. So that delayed the project measurably at the front end of the project. I mean, we're talking 6 to 9 months right out of the gate. And then we had some paint failure on the clarifiers at the end of the job. Like I said, there are 12 clarifiers, 160 feet in diameter, I believe. And the painting system was failing, so we had them go back. They had to do some blasting, repainting. So there were some challenges. So to answer your question, it is 5 years past the initial targeted date. However, It was an aggressive schedule to start with, and they did have some challenges. So, I mean, those are some of the facts about the project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Personally, I'd rather finish at cost than on time, but that's neither here nor there. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Chief Wolf. As there's no new business before the board, we will adjourn. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, June the 21st at 9 a.m. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please stay safe. We absolutely love you.
Yeah, I don't know why
Okay.
they took the batteries out.
I think,
Is that
hi,
okay?
Charm TV, yeah, there we go. Okay. Sorry, folks, we're learning to use our new meeting equipment. We have new mics, they're extra sensitive, so Audrey and I are going to share this morning, and we'll go through our usual process. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Estimates bid opening for June 7th, 2023. I am Celeste Amato, clerk to the Board of Estimates. I am joined by my fantastic four colleagues who are helping us open the bids this morning. First, I have a few addenda to share. First, Department of Finance, RFQ 000205, manage and operate food and beverage service for Baltimore Convention Center. This bid was to be open today, but has been rescheduled for opening on June 21st, 2023. Second, Department of Finance, RFQ 000253, audiovisual and rigging services for Baltimore City Convention Center. This was scheduled to be open today and has been rescheduled for opening until June 21st, 2023. For Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 000245, Baltimore City Building Demolition. This item was scheduled to be open today and will now be opened on June 21st, 2023. For Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 000270, provide and deliver M4 suppressors. This item was scheduled for today, but will now be opened on June 21, 2023. And finally, Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 000281, repair maintenance services for electrical motors. That item was also scheduled for today and will now be opened on June 21, 2023. Those are the last of our addenda announcements for today, and we have 11 bids to open today. And we are going to start with the Department of Transportation, TR 23009, resurfacing highways, various locations, northeast. And I believe we're expecting bid bonds for these.
Yes.
Thank you, Shalon, for that notation. So 23009?
Yep. We have 3 bids, bidders for this bid. The first one is Gray and Son Incorporated. And, okay, we do have a bid bond for this.
And the price should be back here. Where it came out of. Sorry.
Shalon helps me with my lines.
We're supposed to get new stickies. Sorry.
It's okay, maybe I'm hoarding all the stickies in my office.
Should be the last one.
Okay.
It'll be right here.
Okay, and the total bid amount is $1,091,286.00.
And that number is 1,091,286.00?
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
The next bidder is M. Louis Construction Co., Inc. Thank you.
With the bid bond.
And it has a bid bond, so you can see it here. And bid bond, that one, red. And the total bid amount for M. Luis is $1,157,515.50.
Okay, that number was 1,157,515.50.
Yes.
55. 55 cents.
55.
Apologies.
Let
I
me
don't know if I
repeat that one
pronounced
more
that.
time. That is 1,157,515.55.
That is correct.
Thank you. And I'll read through them all again one more time when we close out this opening and before we move to the next.
No worries. The third and final bidder is P. Flanagan and Sons. They indeed have a bid bond. Wait. And the total bid amount is $1,048,203.00.
1,048,203.00.
That is correct.
Great. And I'll go ahead and read through the bidders one more time for folks that are keeping track as the team prepares for the next bid. So this was contract TR 23009, resurfacing highways northeast. And the bidders are as follows: Gray and Son, Inc. for $1,091,286. M. Louise Construction Company, Inc., $1,157,515.55. And P. Flanagan and Sons for $1,048,203. Up next. You guys ready? Just making sure.
I'm ready.
And if we all look really cold, we are, because this room is freezing. Okay, contract TR 23010, resurfacing highways northwest. Does that match what you have, Casey?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. This is, again, resurfacing highways northwest, and our first bidder?
Our first bidder out of three is Gray and Son Incorporated. It has a bid bond,
Thank you.
and the total bid
Amount.
okay, that's it. The total bid amount is $1,059,275.00.
That number was 1,059,275.00. Great.
The next bidder is M. Louise Construction.
Mm-hmm.
It does have a bid bond. And the total bid amount is $1,227,587.25.
That was 1,227,587.25.
That's correct.
Thank you.
The third and final bidder is P. Flanagan and Sons Incorporated. Thank you.
The bid bond.
This has a bid bond, and then, no. The total bid amount is $1,089,000.
Jeez,
$1,089,464.00.
Was your mic not on?
No, but I
That's
think
okay, we could hear you anyway.
I was enunciating.
I think it was picking you up. I don't see the closed captions like usual. That number for P. Flanagan was 1,089,464.00.
That's correct.
I was really hoping he was coming in to make the room warmer. So I'm going to share again the bidders for TR 23010 resurfacing highways northwest. Gray and Son Inc. for $1,059,275. M. Louise Construction Co. Inc., $1,227,587.25. And P. Flanagan and Sons, $1,089,464. Up next, we have, for the Department of Transportation, TR 23011, resurfacing highways southwest. Does that match what you have, Case?
At various
Yep.
locations.
Yep. Our first bidder?
Our
first bidder.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, baby, the Sector 3, because we got a whole bunch of them.
Oh, I said southwest.
Okay, Sector 3, because they got 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, southwest sector 3.
We have two bidders for this one. The first one, M. Louise Construction Co. Inc. It has a bid bond. The total bid price is $1,165,406.25.
That number was 1,165,406.25.
That is correct.
Thank you.
The second bidder is P. Flanagan and Sons Incorporated. Thank you. This has a bid bond, and the total bid amount is $1,084,334.00.
That number was 1,084,334.00.
That's correct.
Great. That contract was TR 23011, resurfacing highways at various locations southwest, Sector 3. The bidders were M. Louise Construction, $1,165,406.25, and P. Flanagan and Sons, $1,084,334. Up next, for the Department of Transportation, we have contract TR 23012, resurfacing highways at various locations southeast, Sector 4.
We have two bidders for this bid. The first one is M. Louise Construction Incorporated. This has a bid bond. Yeah, that's it. And then the total bid amount, so dramatic, $1,114,335.00.
That was 1,114,335.00.
Yes.
That's correct. The second bidder is P. Flanagan and Sons Incorporated. This has a bid bond.
Thank you.
And the total bid is $1,057,108.00.
That was 1,057,108.00.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, those bidders for TR 23012, resurfacing highways at various locations southeast Sector 4. M. Louise Construction for $1,114,335. And P. Flanagan and Sons for $1,057,108.
Yes.
Up next, for Department of Transportation, we have TR 23004, Inspire Schools Sidewalk Reconstruction.
We have four bidders for this bid. Bid bond for the first one, J. Villa Construction, Inc. As I said, they have a bid bond. And what page? That one. I know there's a method, it's just not in my head. And the total bid amount is $988,700.
That number was 998,700.00.
Correct, incorrect.
I'm sorry, what
It's
is?
988,700. $988,700.
Right, okay.
You said, I thought you said 99, not 98.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll repeat the numbers back for everybody at the end.
Thank you.
too.
The second bid is from Monumental Paving and Excavating Incorporated. Thank you. This has a bid bond. Total bid amount, $1,995,920.
That number was 1,995,920.00.
That is correct.
Thank you.
The third bid is for Peniaguas Enterprises. They have a bid bond. And the total bid is $894,515.00.
That number was 894,515.00.
Correct.
Thank you.
The last bidder for this bid is Santos Construction Company Incorporated. We have a bid bond. And the total bid is $985,180.00.
That number was 985,180.00.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kelleher. That was contract number TR 23004, Inspire Schools Sidewalk Reconstruction. And we have bids from J Villa Construction for $988,700. Monumental Paving and Excavating for $1,995,920. Why can I never say this one? Paniaguas, did I say that right? Paniaguas, I should be able to say that. Paniaguas Enterprises for $894,515. And Santos Construction Company for $985,180. Up next for Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 247, Affordable Care Act and IRS reporting.
We haven't received, we didn't receive any bids for this.
And there were no bids,
received.
no bids submitted for RFQ 247, Affordable Care Act and IRS reporting. Up next for Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000246, Printing and Mailing Services for Department of Human Resources.
We've received one bid for this, Remington's Finest, Uptown Press. The total bid amount for this is, let me make sure there's nothing else. Okay, good. $99,918.29.
So that was a bid from Uptown Press for 99,918.29.
Yep, that's correct.
So that was Uptown Press, $99,918.29 for RFQ 246, Printing and Mailing Services for Department of Human Resources.
Thank you.
Up next, we have for the Bureau of Procurement, RFQ 310. The contract name is EV Vehicles.
We have received one bid from Pacifico Ford Incorporated. Looking at the original.
Pricing sheet, but this is the pricing sheet.
It's a pricing sheet.
Whoa, let's say something. Where is the price?
Broken.
Audrey's looking too.
Yeah, hold on. Sorry. Hold on one
Nope.
second.
Let's just take our time and check.
So, doesn't look like this has a, let me just check. I didn't see if it's, this. This looks, you might just have to read the name of this, because there is no total price. Let's see anything
There should be a
on this one. Pacific, bid price, price sheet. Yeah, just read the name, prices will not be read, yes.
We're having some trouble clarifying the price to share on this one, but we have a single bid, and that is from Pacifico Ford, and we will refer this to the agency to look more closely at the bid materials received.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks. Pacifica.
Up next, for Department of Public Works, we have contract number SC946R, sanitary sewer collection system improvements in the Jones Falls Sewer Shed, Glen Avenue Sub-Basin.
We've received one bid.
Can we clarify this is 946R? Because I have a note on here that there were none.
946R.
No, I'm looking at ERC 4055.
That is, I have SC946R as our next.
That's what I have, 946R.
That's what is in front of me.
Should be Spinello. Do you need this? I don't know.
I see,
Yeah, it's just that one line that
I have a
doesn't match.
copy. This is the
is it
copy.
possible that we didn't get bids for 946R?
No, we did. We got one.
Okay, so that's it, one bid. What do you have there? It should be
This is the
Oh,
Spinello.
wrong, so this is number 10 for East. Yeah, I see, have it. It's on the wrong tab.
Okay, no
Okay.
worries.
So do,
Let's read numbers, let's read
still
this
read it.
one. What's that one, number 10? 946R should be Spinello.
It's, okay, let's read this.
There you go.
If-
Give it that.
Let's
is
read
that, so that's SC946R?
Yep,
Yes.
so it's for SC 946R, one bid received from Spinello.
And I know how to spell Spinelli. Alrighty,
All right.
do we have a bid bond?
Let me check.
I'm guessing yes.
I am anticipating. Yeah, we do have a bid bond.
Okay.
And the total bid amount, $6,433,000 and no cents.
That number was 6,433,000.00.
That's correct?
Yes.
That was contract number SC946R, sanitary sewer collection system improvements in the Jones Falls Sewer Shed Glen Avenue Sub-Basin. And that bid was received from Spinello for $6,433,000. Okay. So up next, oh, wait a second. I don't want to confuse you guys while
Okay,
you're
there's this, okay.
juggling paper.
Yeah.
So up next, I have ERC 4055 for Public Works.
Yep. SC,
Okay.
repeat yours again.
I have ERC 4055, Public Works, urgent needs stream, stormwater, and drainage maintenance.
That's not what I have.
I don't have that.
You don't have ERC
Yeah.
4055?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, no
Well, let's just be
worries.
sure
Hold on. Let's see.
before we move on.
Yeah.
That's fine. I must have made a change on the last one that I didn't.
Number 10, now this should be,
It's number
okay.
10.
Okay, no worries, I'll use
Yeah, this
one.
shows up,
It's number, second number,
Pardon
I'm
me.
sorry. On the lists here, so there must have been a change. I had to make a change like last minute.
No, right, but right, sorry.
so what's this one here?
This one
Which is the number?
is SC 7805.
SDC? Or
SDC, yeah, SDC.
SDC. Okay, so I'm going to skip over ERC because we think that one was delayed. And we're going to open SDC 7805, also for Public Works?
Yes,
Yep,
Drainage repairs and improvements at various
Correct.
locations?
yes.
we have two bids. The first one is from Anchor
Sorry.
Construction Corporation.
Uh-huh.
This one's a bit icky. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah,
Oh, I see.
that's the bid. Careful. Yeah. This is mine. Should have a bid bond.
Yes, let's see what we have inside of
Casey,
here.
did you say this was Anchor?
Anchor Construction Corporation.
Thank
We do have a bid bond, and the total amount, $9,389,995.
Okay, that number
And
was.
30 cents.
And 30 cents,
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, let me
Sorry.
fix that and read that
I
back
now
to you.
need reading glasses.
You said 30 cents.
I'll repeat it again, because I messed up. $9,389,995.30.
And you were doing so well up until just then.
Sorry,
9,
Anchor
comma, 389, comma, 995.30 from Anchor Construction?
That's correct.
Thank you. And do we have another?
We have one more from Civil Construction LLC.
Let's put this back.
This one has a bid bond.
Thank you.
And the total bid amount is $4,358,800.00.
That number was 4, comma, 350, comma,
Nope.
8.
358. Go ahead. Repeat it again.
$4,358,800.00.
Okay. That number was 4, comma, 358, comma, 800.00.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. That was contract number SDC 7805, drainage repairs and improvements at various locations. And the bidders were Anchor Construction for $9,389,995.30, and Civil Construction for $4,358,800.
That's it. Okay.
And that was our final opening for today.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and our next bid opening is on June 21st, 2023 at noon, right here in City Hall and live on Charm City TV. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Yeah.